There we go. Hello and welcome back, everybody. It's been a while. Today we have what? How do I pronounce that name?
How you
Pipsky.
want Pipsy,
Pipsky.
whatever.
All right. Hello, Pipsky. You
Hello.
have seen some of the Sopranos, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
How far have you gotten?
I know how it ends.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But you haven't watched it the whole way through.
I haven't. I just bits and pieces.
All right. Like there is like just a couple of like key points from the entire show that I want to take up in this podcast, and that is in relation to that there is coming out a movie called The Many Saints of Newark. Have you heard about it? The movie.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard about it.
It's actually being yeah. It's actually
It's a
like
Sopranos prequel, the movie. I'm
Yeah.
being fed information.
yeah. It is a Sopranos prequel movie, but what's interesting is that the guy playing Tony is James Gandolfini's son.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So kind of like a tribute also since Gandolfini died in 2012 or 2013.
Oh, I did not know that.
No, he did. They were on a vacation in Rome, and he had a heart attack in the hotel and died.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. And at that time, the son here would only have been like 15 or so. So yeah, now he's making this movie, and it's going to be like about Tony and them being young and coming up in the world. Very interesting.
Does sound interesting.
It does. Like when I watched this show with my girlfriend, she thought like, "Wow, this is a really brutal show."
It is. Yeah, it's a pretty brutal show.
It is, because that's how they solve everything. It's like either by fist fight or just plain just kill them. But like what I always found so interesting about it is that they're trying to be organized, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to be civil about it. They're trying to, like have some kind of order about how things are going, and this always, like struck me because I thought that, wow, is this like how it is in the real world? Like in the criminal underworld. And it was like years later when I listened to a podcast on Joe Rogan where former Mexican cop or something was explaining that they do the same thing in the cartel. They try to have some kind of like order, but it always results in chaos at one point or the other.
Yeah, because people want power.
Yeah, people want power, and they will continue to war about certain territories or certain turfs and so on. So many times, like I've like thought that like why can't they just agree on the on the turf, and that's how it is? Well, like gangster logic, I think. But yeah, some backstory here is that Tony was like born in 1959. So in the time that the movie is going to take place in the 1980s, he's going to be in his early 20s in the show, which also fits with Gandolfini's son being in that same age when he's playing this character.
Back before cell phones.
Yeah, back before cell phones. Wow, like good thing that you mentioning that like you had pagers and payphones. Wow, what a time!
Should be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
To show how they tried to get organized and stuff.
yeah, and how difficult it must have been. Like since like you pretty much always have to have a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
But this is something that also like continued on in the later because when you see the show Sopranos, right, then whenever they have something that needs to be said over the phone, they either speak on code, and if it's really serious and they do think that FBI or whatever are listening in, they do meet up in person at Cetrialis or a cafe shop or something to talk details, or at the Bada Bing. So definitely interesting.
You sound super stoked for it.
Yeah, I do, because like there's like two things that I like really. I'm like kind of like disappointed that it is a movie, because like there is so much that they could have done with it. It could have been a whole new show, right? So what I'm like scared about is that there is, like too much shit that they can cram in. There's too much shit to cram into a 2-hour-long movie, because that's not doable. I mean, like there is so much that you can like do with like the with like what happened and what to expect, because like what we know from before, like what you can piece together from the show is that Tony is like talking about how he would use his sister, for instance, to cover for him when he would attend meetings with criminal associates, like that she would like lie and like say that like, yeah, Tony's at the amusement park, whatever, right? When he was like really up to doing no good than planning a robbery, or I don't know, like even killing somebody, right? While just, like Janice lying to the mother and saying like, yeah, Tony's just over at the amusement park. So that's like one thing, and it's also relevant to the way that he's like treating her in The Sopranos and in the show, because I don't know, like, do you remember seeing Janice? They had like a really complicated relationship.
Yeah, they did.
And it just like went out of proportions. What's like she calls him and say that, Tony, I shot Richie. And like
brutal.
Brutal. But this was one of the most boss moments in the show, because he just shows up there, and like he doesn't panic or anything, right? It's just like in a few seconds or a few minutes, he's like just gather himself and being like, okay, Janice, take a shower, get rid of the clothes, give me the clothes so I can burn them, and I'll get rid of this piece of shit. And like to be, and like he didn't even mind it. He doesn't say that, but to him it was a godsend, because like he already hated Richie Aprile. He wanted to kill him himself, but he would never get the okay to do so. So now it was done, and like nothing to be done about it. So yeah, then he's just doing the boss thing, getting the garbage bags, getting the body, like, and the way that he's like talking to Janice in this scene is like, don't worry about it, Janice, it's going to be okay. Like, this is like one of the most normal things for him to do in a day, to get rid of a dead body.
You do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Especially for family.
And like she's a little shocked about, like how he's handling it. So professionally, and being like, no, don't worry about it. But yeah, like I did understand it though. Like she did kill him after he had punched her, because like Richie was a violent man, right? And this just like shocked her, so she goes get the revolver and kills him. And what else is there to expect from the show? And then like we have all these old characters in the show that we're going to now see as pretty much kids, right? We're going to see.
Yeah, I'll probably see overlapping of what happened in the show and the flashbacks.
Yeah,
actually in the actual like movie or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to see like him meeting Carmela at the high school, like the girl that he married. We're going to see him being friends with how he became friends with Artie Bucco, the restaurant owner, and Davis Catino. I don't know if you remember Davis Catino. He wasn't in the show that much, but he was a guy that owed Tony a lot of money in poker. But because he was like Tony's friend, then he was like, okay, I'll credit you 10 grand. I'll credit you 10 grand, right? But at one point, Davis' debt to Tony has like run so much up that like he just can't keep, like just crediting him money on the house, right? And the mafia just pretty much goes in and takes over Davis' sports shop. which is like half funny, half sad moment. I think Dave is like being plagued by Robert Patrick in the show. Anyways, he was this guy was like also like I don't know, like I'm getting like way over myself here. I'm going to pace myself a little bit. Anyways, what do you remember like seeing Tony killing a guy in the show for being a rat?
He killed a lot of guys.
Yeah, he killed a lot of guys, but this was like random. This was completely random. He was on this trip with Meadow to look at this university, and like then he spots a guy that he's like seen on the news earlier, talking because like he's given out some kind of like book about the mafia or whatever, right? So in the criminal underworld, this guy's like viewed as like kind of like a rat. Maybe I'm mixing it up a little bit. Anyways, this guy gets killed by Tony later on. But I'm talking a lot about people that that Tony killed. Anyways, enough of that. Like the more interesting things here to not get ahead of ourselves here is maybe like, do you remember Steve Buscemi in the show?
I don't remember him being in the show.
He was in like a few episodes.
Season 5?
Nah, maybe it was earlier than that. Well, yeah, he might have been in season 5 because he was there when Tony was in the coma, right? And he goes into that house full of dead people. Then Tony B, which is played by Steve Buscemi, is there waving. Now this is like one of the more interesting things because what happens is that when they were in their early 20s, then Tony B was like, as I said, like cousin with Tony, and Tony B was arrested for being part in a hijacking, which our Tony was supposed to be part of, but he failed to appear because in reality he was having a panic attack after an argument with his mom.
Is he going to be in the show, the character,
Tony
or the
B,
movie?
I hope so. I hope so that we will see this. Like not Steve Buscemi though, but like a younger version, I guess. And like this resulted in him blacking out, the panic attack, and suffering a head injury. And then for years, then Tony claimed that he had just sustained the injury for being mugged because, like, I guess like that sounded more manly or macho or something than to admit to his mafioso friends that he had a panic attack, right? And this is the reason why he wasn't in the hijacking, and this is the reason why he didn't go to jail with Tony B. And like he maintained this story, like for all of the show that like he had the panic attack. It was only during confidence or something that he actually said that that it was a panic attack. So this complicates things in like the show when Tony B comes back because Tony still feels a tremendous amount of guilt for this, like because he let him go to prison alone, right?
Yeah, it's kind of fucked.
Yeah, that's kind of like fucked, right? And like what's even more fucked is that Tony actually kills Tony in the show. Yeah. Tony Soprano kills Tony B. Something about that, like it was a requirement because Tony B had been involved in something, and to pay for this, then Tony had to like either serve him up to be killed or kill him himself, and then he chose to do it himself, because like I don't know, like in his mind, it was better that it was somebody that he knew that did it, I guess. So like a lot of like fucked shit happened in the show, If you like think about all the violent stuff that they do and murders, half of these guys should have been out of the game on PTSD alone. anyways, the most interesting thing, though, that I will say about this is the card game. You remember Jackie Jr. in
sure,
in the show, right? Then he kind of like becomes boyfriend with Meadow and all that
Season 2.
stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he starts, like to getting into the wrong side of the tracks, like even though Tony's like trying to push him to become something in school and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't like really realize that Jackie Jr. is kind of dumb, right? He's a jock. He doesn't have the academic brain or something, right? He won't, and plus that he looks hugely up to Tony and like the guys, right?
Yeah.
And like it goes so far that he robs a card game, like a mafioso card game, right? And this is what gets him killed, because then Tony like has an option after this, like either he serve him up to get killed, or you're showing a major sign of weakness and you can't.
Yeah, so he hires a guy.
Yeah. So like so he has to have the guy killed. He doesn't specifically say it, right? But like when Silvio, I think it's Silvio, and then we're like talking about it, then it's like said between the lines that like, okay, you got the okay, go ahead, kill the dude, right? But before all this stuff happens, then Jackie Jr. talks to Tony about it, like saying like, I don't understand the problem. This is the exact same thing that you did back in the day, when you rised up through the crime ranks and became like a made member of the mob or the DiMeo crime family at that time, right? Tony responds and like kind of like angry, throwing one of his fits as usual and saying, well, this ain't back in the fucking day.
Yeah.
Right. And and then they don't go further into this, but what had actually like happened at that time that Tony did it was that he was part of that unofficial crew of young criminals, consisting of Silvio. Remember Silvio, right? Silvio Dante, Ralph Cifaretto, and Jackie April Senior. Those were the gang, right? Jackie Jr.'s father.
Yeah.
And then they hooked up and they decided to rob. This was before they were part of the crime family, but they gained notoriety in the DiMeo crime family by robbing. No, this wasn't the DiMeo crime game. It was a card game hosted by a guy named Feach Lamanna, right? Which was like, I don't know, like another rival gang figure or something in town. So they chooses to rob this card game, and out of the result from that, they're like being like, wow, these guys sound like huge balls, to rob those big badasses. And from there, they all kind of like become made men, and they're being taken under the wings of Paulie Walnuts. Remember that guy, like with all the annoying jokes in the show, right?
Yeah.
And he becomes kind of like the mentor for these people, mainly Tony, though. Ralph was supposed to be part of the card game, but he was left out of the plan due to some pain. So this is also like kind of like why Tony also hates Ralph in the show, because Ralph wasn't part of the act that made them all made men, right? He was just riding the wave and just like, wow, I'm here too, guys. So he becomes part of like the crime syndicate or whatever for something that he didn't do, but something his friends did, right? And like, well, we all remember that Ralph also ended up dead with Tony strangling him and Christopher Moltisanti being so out of his mind on heroin and out of it and being like, fuck Tony, the guy was wearing a wig. This is before they chop him up in the bathtub. Anyways, so yeah, man, like this is all going to be like interesting to see, and then after this card game thing, right? And I said like that he was taken under the Paulie Walnuts' wing and being mentored by him. That's when he commits his first murder in 1982 at the age of 22. I don't think that you probably remember this scene.
No, I don't remember that.
There is a scene in the show where the police has found a body that's been like buried in concrete of some old building, right? And I don't remember who says it to Tony when they're looking at police extracting the skeleton from the concrete, but then he says to Tony, "That was your first, wasn't it?" And Tony responds to say like, "Yeah, Willie Overall, some small time bookie." And like these are the two acts, I guess, that made him, like him, the card game robbing and the murder of this bookie. And eventually Paulie settling to become Tony's own capo after since like, wow, can you imagine that, like mentoring a dude, right, in the mafia, and he becomes your boss? Kind of weird.
It's kind of weird, kind of whack, like.
Yeah. which also like kind of like explains why he's keeping him around, because sure,
it's exciting, all the intricacies.
Yeah, it is.
All the crazy shit that they're going to be showing in the movie.
Yeah. And then and then Johnny is like also like part of this at the time, like Tony's father, and he's also helping Tony at this with the path throughout this ascendancy to becoming like a capo until Johnny Soprano's death in 1986 from emphysema, which is also kind of whack that like a gangster dying from emphysema, not a gunshot wound. At this time, Johnny wasn't like a capo. He wasn't the boss. He was the capo of the crew, along with his brother Junior Soprano. And then,
what would you like to see in the movie? Like, what are you excited about?
I want to see these main key events. I want to see the main key events like the card game and. Especially, like the mentoring of Tony by both Paulie, Johnny, and Junior, right? And to get like filled in some holes in the story that we didn't get in the show,
because there were so many questions.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions with the show, and that's kind of like what I'm hoping to see. And the reason why I'm like saying that they could have made like an own show out of this is because there is so much, right? Because like they could have explored the storylines of not only Tony Soprano, they could also explore the storyline of Silvio Dante, Ralph Cifaretto, Jackie Aprile Jr., like these main guys, right? But
so it all like takes place in New Jersey, right? Like,
yeah. New York.
So if it's in New York, like, do you think they're gonna like CG the two towers in?
No, not New York. I mean like New Jersey.
Newark, yeah.
Yeah, right. I think so. That they will CG the two towers in.
What do you think would be a really dope surprise for the show?
Well, I don't remember completely, but if I remember it correctly, then. In the intro of the show, they removed the two towers after they had fallen.
Huh.
But you know, like don't quote me on that. Like I gotta like check an episode of like season 5 or season 6 or something,
Yeah, I
and
don't know anything about that. That's kind of interesting.
see if the two towers are there, because I don't believe that they are. But
I mean, it's plausible. They did that a lot back then.
yeah, but it's also like plausible that they will not film any intro of New York, and it will all just be around New Jersey.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Yeah.
They removed it from Men in Black 2 and Spider-Man, I know.
Yeah. They did? Wow.
They did.
Man, and you know, like I don't know, like I just feel like it's an interesting time that it's going to take place in like the 1980s, where it's not all biased and where it's not all bullshit, and where like I don't know, the way I'm looking at it is that 1980 seems more real than 2020. In the way that you don't have social media, you don't have the internet in the same extent as you have today, right?
Yeah, so, you had to memorize people's numbers.
Yeah, you had to memorize people's number, or you would, like go see people in person,
Use payphones.
So there was like a lot less to influence your brain than it is today.
Yeah.
You couldn't check up Facebook in 1980 and
not a lot of gangsters going to the library.
yeah, right.
How to sell cocaine.
How to sell cocaine. Well, everything would be, like more hands-on. There wouldn't be any bullshit. Yeah, like that kind of like thing. And that's like why I love this era from like everything from like 1920 to 1980 is epic in my opinion. 1990, then it starts to become like degrading, because then you're like starting to move on to internet. You're starting to have like those awful modem internet sounds and the fax machines. Yeah.
What do you think like the future of technology is going to be?
Well, difficult to say. I do think that there will be like a stock market crack in the technology sector within the next 5-6 years or so. But I still think that like overall in the big picture, in decades and decades, it's just going to be rising to like a completely unprecedented level. Definitely.
Have you seen Black Mirror at all?
I have seen Black Mirror, of course.
Yeah, you ever think like that's the direction we're going in, some of that stuff?
Some of it, yeah. Some of it. Particularly, like, I don't believe like this one episode, like seen season 2 with the detective episode. You remember that?
Yeah, I've seen them all.
Wow, okay. I loved the detective episodes. Holy shit. Where it is a crime to have babies, and like the punishment is just straight up execution on the spot.
Yeah, it's crazy. And all the technology, it's funny. I had to do a project at university, and one of the people in my team was talking about to do a Black Mirror thing, like the social points, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that already exists. That's not like a made up, like that's what China has.
Yeah.
And it's just, people don't know that. Like, that's a real thing that already exists. And a lot of the shit that's in Black Mirror, that's very, very possible. Like, just taking the entire data of a singular human, putting it in an android, and allowing them to, in some way continue life.
Well, they are already...
Like, that's possible. That's a thing they could do.
They're already working on that, on extracting the human conscience onto a hard drive. The setbacks, though, in the technology sector per date, though, is that it takes up way more space than you can imagine, right? Which is something they figured out like later, like, oh shit, it's not enough with a human brain cannot fit in a 2 terabyte hard drive.
Well, they're getting, because of Moore's law, like continuing like technology, we're like ahead of schedule according to Moore's law. Like, so I think we're going to get there for sure. We already have like robots that can talk to each other and stuff and make their own languages. Like,
I think so too. That if you had the option to download your consciousness from your brain and into, like what was it in that episode? It was like different worlds that they were.
Yeah, it was like when you died, you go into some kind of data world.
Yeah, and they were.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They were choosing what data world to go to, so they could jump from, the 1980s California data world, to like a futuristic 2040 world or whatever, right? Or 1920.
I think I would choose to do that if it was available. If in the data world, I could discontinue myself at some point.
Yeah, I think so too, because I don't know how long time it would take, but I would imagine after 500 years of like partying, having sex with different people, and doing everything possible you can, tasting every kind of like food you can, seeing every possible place you can see in the world. At some point, you would probably discontinue yourself because you would get bored. You would become depressed.
I mean, I don't know. That's the interesting thing to me, because to me, I love these conversations, and if people are constantly coming into this new data world, you can meet these new people and be like, oh my gosh, what's going on out there,
Sure.
And you get all this new information and new ideas, which is, interesting.
Like
to me. I think that's what makes it worth living, is those new ideas, those new things.
Sure, like it is, like it is interesting that you would meet new people all the time. You would get the lowdown on what's happening in the world. You would probably also be able to access the internet in the artificial world you were in. But I don't know. Like, did you ever watch True Blood?
Oh no! I kept saying I was going to, but I never watched that.
It was like this, like one vampire, like that just.
I know. I really should, because I really like the vampire stuff, but I haven't.
Like there's this one vampire in the show that after 2,000 years he decides to just walk out in sunlight and kill himself.
Yeah, it's possible.
I think, like you would experience the same thing if you had been at millennia in a computer world. No matter how many people that you have met, no matter how many conversations you have had, you have at one point you would have heard them all. And like, I don't know. I'm struggling to see how you would not get bored, right? But maybe not. Maybe not if you are able, to constantly feed your brain, or your artificial brain at this point, with a new story, and continuing somehow to be intrigued, then yeah. But
that could be interesting.
But I mean, like, there's an artificial world, so you could also, like, theoretically have a team of 50 NPC psychologists around you at any given time, right?
That's true. Because everyone must have had some sort of profession, when they were living.
Yeah. So you
maybe you could only be on a server with adults or something, Yeah,
maybe, but you should be able to jump servers. So who's to say that you couldn't jump a server and find a psychologist, find 10 psychologists?
Yeah, that would be fun.
Very interesting. So I guess you
especially
would,
like the idea that you could never possibly listen to all the music in the world. You could never read all the books that have ever been written, you know? But if you had eternity, you freaking could, You could know,
Like, even if you had, like, the eternity, you still... Power. I don't know. I still don't think that you would be able to catch up on completely on everything. At least, like, not the new work being made and stuff. It's like, say that you are a teacher specialist or something, right? Then you're still not a specialist, because there is always going to be new material and new stuff to...
people are going to keep coming in and keep giving these new ideas and stuff,
Well, sure, for sure. But You don't think that your brain would explode at one point, or you would just be like, okay, screw it. I don't know.
Oh, you know?
I don't know.
Especially
Like,
because the mind like just gets rid of data too. So like you read something and then like, 15 years later you forgot like most of the things in the book except for like the critical moments,
yeah. I know that for me, if I were to pick a server, it should have been like some 1890s server where it was me on a horseback or something, exploring America.
That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. I think it's interesting that you have the obviously the humanoid version in the mirror one, but I think it'd be interesting because I think for sure people would do like cat girl servers,
Yeah.
like freaking anime characters and stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Freaky. Yeah, like there was a lot of good Black Mirror episodes. I also liked the one where it was all about the rating. That was fucking good.
Social status one?
Yeah, the social status one.
Well, I'm saying that already exists in China. That's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
It's totally wackadoo, and that's why they were like in Hong Kong, they were tearing the fucking. Sorry, I curse a lot. They were tearing the scanners down for identifying people. People are wearing special masks so you can't identify who they're hanging out with.
Wow.
Taking down the cameras, taking down all kinds of stuff to make sure the system won't work.
Hong Kong. Damn.
I think like 25 or 50% of the population is protesting now.
Well, they're also like in a unique position though. Unique in a bad way that China wants their land.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that like Shanghai and actual China cities are now outproducing Hong Kong. Because if Hong Kong had continued to be able to produce as much as it was, back in 2010, then they would have been fine. They'd be like, okay, just say a city state, but now China's outproducing them. So it's like, okay, you are now in the fold.
Yeah. Wow. You're now in the fold. I'm like also surprised to see how little the Western world are like doing to help Hong Kong. Because all the Western world is like doing is like, oh, we're going to put some sanctions on China for this. But that's it. They don't go any further than that. Same with Russia's annexation of Crimea.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Crimea, maybe I don't have enough facts on it. I feel like a lot of people in Crimea voted to be part of Russia, so why wouldn't they be allowed to be part of Russia is my hot take.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I would like to say that it's not them for them to decide it, I guess. And
I think it is. I think if like, New York City decided it wanted to be its own city state, I think they should be allowed to do that.
Well, I get what you're like saying, but that's not how the world works anymore, right? That's how the world worked.
And I disagree with it.
Yeah, but that's how the world worked, 150 years ago. I'm guessing that's why Washington, D.C. is not part of any state, right?
I think they're petitioning. People in D.C. are petitioning to be a state.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would they do that? I mean,
so they can like vote and have, the same rights as U.S. citizens.
But there's no state tax.
They're getting taxed without representation, so
there's only
founding father stuff.
There's only federal tax, right? Weird.
Well, there's also like all kinds of income taxes and your wage taxes and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but like here's the thing though, like that DC has the highest minimum wage in all of America. I think it's like $14 or $15 an hour.
Yeah, I want to say one of the presidents, I can't remember. I want to say it was Theodore Roosevelt actually did that. That's what caused the minimum wage in the first place to rise was because he was just paying everyone outrageously in DC and it was hard to compete. So they raised the minimum wage.
Okay, so it was just like raised from there time after time. Wow. Yeah, but think about it. That means that If you're working on a fucking McDonald's in DC, you're earning close to 30,000 a year.
No
That's
way.
good. That's good for minimum wage. Yeah, if you work,
I don't think so.
there is okay. Let's see. Like, there's around 2,000 hours in a normal work year in the U.S. Right?
There's
I
what?
believe 2,000 work
Oh, it
hours.
is. It's
Yeah.
$15 an hour in DC. Holy cow!
2,000 hours equals 15
I
times
think-
$15. That's
I think the-
30 grand.
I think the minimum wage should be tied to inflation, and if it was tied to inflation, the minimum wage would be around like $22. I think
Well-
that should be done, slowly over time. You just don't, say outright, okay, it's $22. You say, okay, next year it's going to be raised $1. Next year it's going to be raised $1. So you allow companies to, get used to it.
That
And it's been proven to work. Like Portland, Oregon, a bunch of, places have done it, and it's worked, and it
Yeah.
does wonderful.
I was going to say that it would depend on what state you are in, right? Take New York, for instance, which is the U.S.'s United States' most expensive state, where it is said that like for $150, you only get $100 worth if you compare the prices for the rest of the country, right? While in
I think
some of the
Chicago is the most expensive state.
what state?
Not Chicago, Illinois.
No way. And then you have the cheaper states, which is like some of the South states, like Arizona or something. You will get $76 or $86 worth. No, I'm sorry. Where you get
No, I just think it's crazy expensive in Chicago.
where you get $86 worth, like for $86.
California is the most expensive state, which makes sense because Hollywood.
Yeah, no, not completely. I mean, like, here's the thing, I'm gonna see if I can find it. Like, if you're talking like prices on real estate, then yes, then it is like that valley. Like, fuck, where was it? Like in just outside of Silicon Valley. Where was that?
I think we're comparing for me, I'm comparing okay, even if you're making a lot of money in like California or whatever, there's still like a cost of living,
Yeah. There's a cost of living, and that's not leveled, not at all, right?
Saying okay, so you don't want to raise the minimum wage across the board federally. It should be tied to inflation, like even just in your state,
Yeah.
so people can afford to have housing and stuff.
No, you can't. I mean, like, this is what I was like seeing with this place outside of Silicon Valley, where you would pretty much need to earn over $1 million a year to afford a house, to afford to even get a loan for a house. Pretty crazy.
I think it's nuts that California and New York still have such low wages, though. Like, they're like notoriously expensive.
Yeah, they are. But like New York is like also up there. Like, not in real estate though, but where you have like twice the price for healthcare benefits, healthcare. What's it called in English? Like the HMO things, right?
HMO?
Yeah,
Healthcare benefits? Universal healthcare?
Yeah, when you get like the healthcare insurance, like that's the most expensive on the East Coast, where it's like something like
health
700.
insurance and lawyers.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
allowing insurance companies and lawyers to advertise, in my opinion, should be illegal.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think I found it. Here, sent it to you on Discord. Now that's what you need, in an annual salary in order to get the loan to buy a house. Which is like holy shit when you look at San Jose. That's what I was like talking about. San Jose outside of San Francisco. Holy shit, you need an average salary of almost $255,000 in order to buy a house.
This is nuts. This is like there's no and people and they'll be like, oh, you're only supposed to spend 30% of your income on the roof over your head. And it's like hardly anyone in the US is doing that.
Yeah. Like that's completely nuts. Like maybe
most people are doing 80, 90, 98% of their income on the roof over their head.
Like maybe like Oklahoma City looks looks all right, like 41,000 a year. Wow. And New Orleans is also like surprisingly cheap in apostrophes with 49K. But yeah. When you look at like the more expensive ones there, then you have like the West Coast that you talked about, and then New York and Boston. And where is Chicago? Chicago isn't that expensive, you see? It's like 66,000. Which I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Which I wouldn't assume.
Chicago seems mad expensive to me.
Yeah. Which I wouldn't.
$10 for a root beer.
Yeah. So you have like it seems like the dead zones here are pretty or no go zones is San Francisco and San Jose, but I'm like fucking crazy that LA is still like half of what you need to live in San Jose. It's crazy. Wow. And Seattle too. Seattle on the same level pretty much as New York City. So yeah, on the national level, the median home price in America is $257,000, which you would need 61K a year to make that 30% monthly payment you're talking about.
And it blows my mind because, like people that are the children of the greatest in the silent generation, the boomers, they bought their houses for like $80,000,
Yeah.
And it was the same minimum wage.
Yeah.
And then they tell you, pick yourself up from your bootstraps, which was intended to be like an impossible thing.
Yep.
It's just freaking.
This is capitalism for you.
And these people, these same people arguing about why, people shouldn't have a raise in the minimum wage.
No.
But senators and congressmen will give themselves a raise because jets are expensive. Yeah,
jets are expensive. Pittsburgh is also pretty cheap, though, where you only need a salary of $37,000 a year to get a house. Like, that's how I think it should have been like for all of the US. It shouldn't be as expensive as this at all. But this is the thing, like America is like, I don't know, like the most capitalist country in the world, pretty much. Because you do not have paid vacation, correct?
Your job offers it, but I don't think it's required.
It's not required, no. So you don't have paid vacation. Is there, like a pension plan made by the government where, like you're told that like you can retire when you're 62, 65 or whatever? I know that if you are a cop or something, right, then you are allowed to retire after 20 years in the service or something in the U.S.
That's another thing that's totally effed is they do this whole, like, if you join the military, you get free education and free healthcare, and you can retire after 20 years. What they don't tell you is that you're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for $500 a month.
Yeah.
And you're going to retire and get, surprise, $500 a freaking month. And that's if you're retired. That's not if like you get your limb shot off. If you get your limb shot off and you have to be removed from service, you'll get $100 a month. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Even if it was just 19 years, you didn't make it to the 20. Thank you for your service. Here's $100.
Like, wouldn't that
Isn't it
depend like on? Wouldn't that depend like on what branch you are in the military?
It does not.
Wow.
A is VA.
Remember that. Do not sign up for the American Armed Forces, as you will get
it's
screwed in your
nuts.
asshole for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, if you want to join for your 3 or 4 years to get, you know, you get a tech school of some kind that's absolutely free, and you get your GI Bill, and then you get out, you know?
Yeah.
That's fine. You don't have any other, but you don't need to stay in for a long period of time. That's just going to suck your soul away.
Well, like that was the reason why there were so many volunteers for the Operation Iraqi Freedom thing. Was generally money, you know, like people signed up because they were poor, right? At least like majority did. And I still think like it is like that today, you know, like maybe some do, but I still think that the majority that signs up for the military or armed forces come from poor families.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because also, which is another freaking thing that they don't talk about, is if you want to be an officer in the military, an officer has to say this person should be an officer. So who's doing that? Family members, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this guy, you know, appoints his son that he should be an officer, you know, and then the rich stay rich.
Yeah. That's how it stays. All the way. All right, I think like we're going to end it here, but like I would love to pick this up on another night if you're free for that.
Whatever. I'm down.
What? Yeah.
I'm down.
You're down. Epic. All right, Pipsky, I want to say like thank you for joining. I don't know if you have an Instagram channel or YouTube channel or something that you'd like to promote.
It's all on my profile. Yeah. Click a roo.
Yeah, do link it to me in Discord, and I will post it in the description. And yeah, thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
Until next time, folks.